Get them all.
Oh my God.
Get 'em
Okay.
all.
No, I can't touch those blood-gorged mucus sacs.
I was in the jungles of Laos one time, and there were leeches that were that big. And I've had some that were on me that were about 8 inches long. I'm Hazen Audel. Currently, I have a show called Primal Survivor on National Geographic and Disney+. I've been practicing bushcraft, outdoor survival for over 30 years now. Today, we're going to be looking at jungle survival scenes in movies and judge how real they are.
Keep your arms above the surface. When the kid comes back, grab on.
That could happen about that fast. When I was watching them sink, that can be realistic. It just depends on the viscosity of the quick mud or the quicksand. The deeper and thicker it is, the more you suck into it, and it's harder to get out. You're gonna need your hands to try to swim out or use them to try to pull yourself out of the sand. If they were to just pull you out without you moving your legs, it almost gets worse. There's more suction. So what you want to do is sort of swim and wiggle your legs to try to move around that matrix of water, mud, and grit and try to get it to turn into a slushy so it'll pull you out. By asking for assistance, that was a good thing. So that's why I at least give it a 3.
Pirana. Better eat them before they eat you.
That is the great thing about piranhas. They are an abundant fish, and they're very easy to catch because you just need some sort of a meat source and then a hook. And that's usually generally the first thing you're gonna catch. Catching a piranha with a net is pretty slim, but there's a lot of catfish and other kinds of fish that are really sluggish. The thing about piranhas and piranha behavior is that they kind of read off of each other's behavior. So if one fish gets really excited, takes a bite, there's blood in the water, there's that scent in the water, it'll start exciting other fish, and pretty soon it starts to become a chain reaction. There's well over 20 different species of piranha in the Amazon, all specialists in eating different ways, but the most dangerous one are the red-bellied piranhas, and which is probably what they're trying to depict here. That is fairly realistic. It would start as one piranha, and then it would be hundreds of piranha. You'd get the out of that water, that's for sure. I would rate this clip as a 7. You have to kind of look at the probability of this happening. That sort of almost wives' tale of you being devoured by piranha in water, it's just incredibly remote. When you talk about the Amazon, it's such a vast area. There's a lot of scenarios, a lot of different kinds of rivers, but there are certainly rivers that are like that and really muddy like that too, and rocky that have that would be really difficult to navigate. I could see that the watercraft that they had built was out of necessity. The thing to keep in mind is when you build a watercraft like that, they do float, but they can still weigh hundreds, if not thousands of pounds. So they're by no means agile. How that raft hit the rock was very realistic. Wrapping around the rock, that's a really dangerous scenario. If that was your last-ditch effort to avoid going off a big waterfall or going through some rapids that you knew you wouldn't be able to survive, that's what you would have to do. They were lucky in that when that raft hit, they were on the backside of the raft. A lot of times, usually the raft will go like this, and then the water will push it this way. You're on this way, so you're between the rock and the raft with all that raging water pressing against, and then you drowned or you get crushed to death. It helps out if you were experienced and you knew what you were doing, and if you were purposeful about it, they probably did the right thing.
No, Kevin!
You're not ever going to be able to swim against the current. You just have to understand the rapids, understand the eddy lines, and try to get to shore the best you can, understanding that you're still going to get swept down the current. I was a professional whitewater guide for many years, so that was all par for the course. Well, the biggest killer out there when you're out in a survival situation, number one killer is exposure. But another big killer is just by getting yourself in trouble and injuring yourself and dying of trauma. So when you do things like, for example, climb a big tree, you fall out of the tree, you're gonna get damaged and hurt. So if you can shake the fruit off of a tree, if you can get a big branch or a rock and try to hit the fruit out of the tree and have it go safely to the ground, that's your best bet. Sometimes that's not always the scenario, and if you're desperate for food, you take desperate measures. The reason why I love the Amazon is every single nook and cranny has something living in it. I'm a guy that loves snakes. I'm a little bit of a sicko. I can usually tell right away what kind of snake it is and if it poses a danger. They were showing it as aggressive, it was striking, but it was a python, so it wasn't gonna pose any danger. If it was a poisonous snake, like maybe a fertilans or something, you just wanna stay the out of its striking range, for sure. Everything I saw was very plausible. I could understand why they were doing what they were doing. I would rate this clip as a 10. Traps are a very common way of bringing meat to the table in remote areas, especially in the jungle. There's so many animals around, so many different options of things to catch. To make a trap as effective as it could be, it needs to be very well hidden, just like you see there in that clip. I have seen traps where it's going to take multiple people to be able to bend down a branch or a tree. That's a rare scenario because they're going to be wanting to be catching something pretty big, the size of a cow, a tapir, something like that. The thing about trapping is you have to know where to set the trap, you have to know animal behavior, you have to know the species that are around, and then you develop a trap based on what you're trying to catch. Once you get the animal stuck in the trap, you have to make sure the animal's gonna stay there until you get there. I didn't see all the details of this trap, but I would give it a 7. In the modern world, they try to stay away from sort of any kind of wild water. Everybody seems to be really scared of it. But in a desperate situation like that, you're trying to get any little bits of water as you can. This is pretty realistic based on, for example, remote islands like that are out in the South Pacific. The only fresh water is water that's been collecting on leaves from the dew or rain, and that is the only place where you're going to be able to get water. So in that clip, that was a very realistic scenario. And to collect it in a vessel, like a coconut, is a very realistic scenario. There's actually thousands of people that live in this sort of same environment, indigenous people that have no fresh groundwater, so they're totally reliant on water that's collecting from dew on leaves and also rainwater. I have 2 very good friends that were the survival expert consultants on this film. So based on their expertise and experience, they implemented it into this film. This clip is the strongest clip I've seen as far as realism, and I rate this clip a 10.
Yeah.
Okay,
I actually like seeing that clip because it brings back good old memories. I have been in scenarios where I've gone through water where I wasn't thinking that there were leeches and had leeches that same size on me. I was in the jungles of Laos one time, and there were leeches that were that big. And I've had some that were on me that were about 8 inches long.
No! What is that?
Stop. Maybe the jumpsuit scared him off. I don't know.
If you wear tighter clothes, it would be difficult to have a leech because the leech really has to make contact with your skin. Leeches have sort of a 3-part tooth system, so it has to be able to get onto that latch, onto your skin, make skin contact, and then dig those 3 teeth into your skin. They have a saliva that makes it so you can't feel what they're doing.
Don't make that sound.
Trying to like taking anchovies off my Caesar salad.
Generally, righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, and give her a hard tug. Once you pull them off, it is truly just a bloody mess. And sometimes you'll be bleeding for half the day afterwards, after a good big leech bite like that. That is a 10. That is very possible. Those are very realistic looking leeches. To To make a parachute work, you're pretty well strapped in. You're usually going to stay suspended up in the branches, and then you have to cut your way or unbuckle yourself out. A lot of trees, plants, shrubs are trying to protect themselves from being eaten, so they have thorns, barbs. Being snagged by little thorns and big thorns is sometimes a daily event. You want to leave it in place and try to get medical attention. If you don't have anybody there to help you, and you're not going to be able to get medical attention for weeks maybe, you're probably going to have to do something about that and get it out of you. You got to kind of look at it like pulling the plug, and then you can bleed to death coming out of that puncture wound. So I think she'd be even in more pain than what is portrayed. So I think it'd be a stretch to give it a 3.
You got a good pair of walking shoes?
During the wet season, it'll rain like that every day. It depends on where you're at in the Amazon. It can range anywhere from about 3 months to 6 months generally.
You
Mudslides and landslides are very frequent in the jungle. Anywhere where there's a big slope like that, there's so much rain like that that the land just gives way. I've been closest to this sort of scenario just by being on big roads and then having the road washed away. Actually, I have a big scar in my leg from a big rock slide, which was a kind of a landslide. More than likely, you're gonna at least get pretty cut up. I give this clip a 5. Before humans figured out a way to make steel and copper and metal, their only cutting implements were from bone, teeth, and sharp rocks. So those, they look like vines, but they're actually roots. A lot of people, it's kind of a misnomer when they talked about Tarzan swinging from vines. It's actually, oftentimes those are roots coming from epiphytic plants that are living on top of the branches of other trees. And they send these big, long roots to go down and get water and access the dirt down below. If you're familiar with the rainforest, you know what works best for different scenarios. You know where the strongest ropes and strongest roots are by how they look. It's kind of like people that live in the city. They know that that little Toyota is not a fast car, but a Ferrari is a very fast car. People can see the rainforest like that. That's just all comes from familiarity of being outside. You recognize what a strong piece of wood is as opposed to a rotten branch. So vines and roots, if you get the right kinds, they're really strong and make very quick and dirty rope, just like that. This is actually grass. It's twisted and splied together to be able to make a really strong rope. This is another very strong fiber that could easily support body weight, but this is bark that's peeled off of a tree. I got this out of Guyana, which is very close to the Amazon.
Yeah!
Mowgli made that clip look really easy to try to be able to get those bees like that. You could go there and kick the hive off like that. I mean, you would get stung almost to death being unprotected like that, and especially without use of smoke. So in that scenario, it was unrealistic. Just holding onto a rope like that, if you did wind up getting yourself into honey, it'd be a sticky, slippery mess, making it even more dangerous. I give this clip a 4. Using blowguns is fairly common with a bunch of different tribes. There's poison on this tip right here. In some places it's even more common than using a bow and arrow. Probably easiest way to think about it is like a giant high-performance spitwad. The longer of a blowgun that you have, the straighter a poison arrow is going to fly through the air. They fly incredibly fast, and also since they're so small, they can go through leaves, they can go through branches. They're a lot smaller than a big arrow that typically gets locked up in leaves and branches in the canopy. So they're, in some places, they're the They're the favored hunting instrument. Well, when you're talking about the Amazon, there are thousands of different trees, plants, shrubs. Every single one of those has a use. A lot of them have chemical properties that can be used not only as hallucinogens, but also have chemical properties that we've incorporated into our modern medicine. I've seen similar ritualistic plants being used like this in Colombia, Venezuela, and Brazil. No, you wouldn't be able to catch a fish this easily with a spear. The best way is to sneak up on a fish, so you have to be quiet. A lot of times in a canoe, you have somebody in the back paddling, and then the marksman, the person with the spear, is out in the front. You can spear them while they're sleeping. I rate this clip at a 6. My favorite scene that I got to watch today was that scene with romancing the stone, because I remember that as a child, and that only increased my intrigue about going to the rainforest myself. And since I went there myself, it's been probably the most significant thing I have going on in my life. And if you like this video, why not click on to the next one?